of the bill. The first bill is Representative Hassan's House File 20. Representative Hassan, to your bill.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Thank
Please
you
proceed.
for, oh, sorry.
Proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. I want to thank you for this opportunity to present House File 20, an act relating to real property modifying termination of tenants at will and requiring a residential tenant to notice of grounds for eviction before an action may be brought. We're amending Minnesota Statute 2020 Sections 504B-135, 504B-321. As you guys know, 2020 has thrown many surprises at us, including a pandemic that took many lives, confined us in our homes, and shut down our economy. When the governor announced a shelter in place, we had thousands of Minnesotans who had no place to call home. We also witnessed the murder of George Floyd, followed by the civil unrest that left many businesses burned to the ground. I guess we can all say 2020 had been one heck of a year. Thousands of Minnesotans have lost their jobs, which left them unable to pay rent and mortgages, buy food, or continue to provide for their families. With the help of the eviction moratorium in place, we can keep families housed for now. But then what happens after the moratorium ends? As we all know, evictions are not a COVID-related issue only. We had thousands of Minnesotan families struggling with evictions on their record prior to COVID. According to researchers, the people facing the highest risk of evictions are low-income women of color, followed closely by families with children and domestic violence victims. Families who are evicted regularly lose their possessions, lose their jobs, and experience higher rates of depression. And for children, the instability caused by eviction can result in worse outcomes in education, health, and future earnings. What House File 20 is intending to do is give tenants 14-day notice prior to filing eviction. It takes about 21 days for Hennepin County emergency assistance to be processed. That was prior to COVID-19, and 14 days for Ramsey County. If someone suddenly loses their job and must seek assistance, it takes at least 2 weeks or more to be approved for any assistance. And this legislation is giving folks more time to find the appropriate assistance needed before an eviction is filed. It's a fact that eviction is costly, impacts families and individuals negatively for many years to come. So it's my understanding that we're avoiding the filing of eviction in the first place and finding a common ground with landlords. Eviction hurts families. Eviction is one of the top reasons why people are homeless. Eviction costs a lot of money, and not to mention, it's cheaper to keep families housed than house them after an eviction or after they have been homeless. It's worth noting that the governor's office, as well as the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, support this legislation and all the legislation you're going to hear today to modify our eviction laws. With that, Madam Chair, I think I have testifiers who can walk through the bill.
I think you have Mr. McDonough, who is maybe part of the initial overview of the bill. Mr. McDonough.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Hassan. Again, my name is Larry McDonough. I'm Senior Counsel with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. I've been a housing attorney for almost 40 years. I've got about 10,000 tenants and landlords that I've represented under my belt. I've been involved with housing legislation since around 1986. And also in 1986, I started as a landlord off and on over the years and sold my last property about 5 years ago. So I think I understand both sides of the landlord-tenant equation. The 14-day notice provision that's in the bill is, there's already a 14-day notice provision in Minnesota Statute 504B.135. What this does is it changes it from a permissive notice to a mandatory notice. And it's based on other notice provisions that we have in Minnesota law. The 14-day notice is the same as the notice that a tenant must give a landlord before bringing a rent escrow action or a tenant remedies action for habitability problems. It's also the same as what you have for public housing tenants as well. So what the bill requires is that the notice state the amount that's due, and that it include information about the tenant might be eligible for financial assistance. And it also makes, it also clarifies that this type of notice meets some of the requirements for getting emergency assistance. As the representative noted, there have been problems with delays in emergency assistance with trying to verify whether there is a debt and what the amount is. And what this does is states that this type of notice satisfies some of those requirements. So hopefully it will streamline the process for getting emergency assistance. And I just have to say from my experience, both as an attorney representing tenants in public housing, that notice in public housing has led to, I think, way less eviction cases for non-payment of rent than we would have seen otherwise. It gives both the parties an opportunity to discuss the problem, figure out if the rent debt can be cured, get emergency assistance. And in some situations, it encourages the tenant to move because this property is not affordable, and that it leads to less evictions, less homelessness, less shelter costs, and really increases housing stability. So I think with that, I will stop talking and see if there are questions now or questions later.
And members, I think what we're going to do is present the bills and hear the testifiers. And then when we move the bills, we'll go to member questions.